And welcome into the program. Maddy Hudak does a great job, sideline reporter for the Tulane Green Wave Radio Network, and a big one coming up in Oxford. And Maddy, I want to ask you real quick. Tell me some other thing that you've got going on. I know you're staying super busy.
Yeah, so I've just launched a few sites on Roundtable. It's a new venture we're doing, and I've been covering the Tulane Green Wave as well as the Saints 49ers Cowboys. So a lot going on to start the year for sure.
Um, well, first of all, safe travels. I know you guys are headed down to Oxford very soon. I think we need to start with John Summerall, and the reason I say that is because I think that John Summerall is not only one of the best coaches in your conference, in the American. I think he's one of the best conference coaches in college football. And you know, folks at Ole Miss know John very well. People in the SEC know him very well. What's he like to cover, kind of on a daily basis?
He's a blast to cover, and we've all kind of said he's really just unique and very, open with media, very personable with media, and it just doesn't really feel like there's almost that divide. It's been really honestly a blast, and I think the way that he treats his players and everything, it just translates to the way that he treats everyone else.
We had a chance to listen to some of his media call, and I don't know if you heard the story, but Lane Kiffin's dad, when he was at Troy, John was at Troy, came into the locker room and talked about discipline and how well they were prepared defensively. Is that one of the reasons that Tulane is so successful? Do you think because of they kind of emulate what kind of their coaching staff is?
Yeah, absolutely. He told that story, I think, on Tuesday. And yeah, I think, the toughness and everything, those kind of core values that you heard that they saw in his Troy teams that he had, I think you can really see in these Tulane players. I think they're all just really bought into that.
Let's look at this offense just for a moment. I think it all starts with transfer quarterback Jake Reslaf. What have you seen out of him? And he's very highly decorated transfer. Just how good is he?
Yeah, I think what everyone was not expecting was his mobility and really just the speed with which he's able to do that. Four rushing touchdowns against Duke. That was pretty incredible to watch, especially after following up what was a really impressive game against the Wildcats with a 69-yard touchdown run. I think that just adds a really big wrinkle to what he can do, and it really rejuvenated and really gets the guys on offense just really excited. I think they were all kind of surprised about his speed as well, but he's also just been a really great leader out there. You very much forget that he arrived, 38 days before the season opener to have just the poise and command that he does out there. It's really been impressive to watch.
When he goes to the air, I know he's got some targets. The transfer Shaz Preston, Bryce Bohannon, Garrett, Meinhardt, Barnett, and then Zycar Lewis Jr. Who is kind of the main target you think he's going to go to?
So they're kind of still, molding that a little bit. I think
Yeah.
Omari Hayes and Shaz Preston are two guys that you definitely should watch out for. Omari Hayes led the team with receptions the first week, didn't have as big of a game in the second week, but then kind of popped back out against the Blue Devils. So I think that he is obviously someone to watch. And then Shaz Preston is someone we just kind of been waiting for him to have a breakout game a little bit. And I think you started to see that happen a little bit against Duke. And then again, him being from, originally committed to Alabama and having that opportunity to now go play in an SEC environment, I think will give him just a little more juice. And then I've seen Retzloff just really likes his tight ends as well.
Looking at the roster, and sure, there are a lot of transfers. I mean, that's just kind of the way the college football world is today. It doesn't appear on this two deep that I see there are as many transfers as programs throughout the country. What does that say to you as a program that doesn't have as many transfers as maybe some other teams that Tulane is facing?
I think they have a lot of transfers. I think they have like 50 new star people. They lost just a lot of starter guys, but they did retain a really important core. So that is important to remember. I think you're not going to be able to keep everyone in today's college football era when it comes to NIL and stuff like that. But I think culture and just a real connection with your head coach and your team, it really does matter. And I think, one of Summerall's best traits is just, and he said it's his best and worst trait, but his honesty. I think that goes a long way with recruits knowing what their role is going to be, not being shocked when they get midway through the year and thinking there was kind of a different pathway for them. And so I think a lot of that kind of plays into that retention.
How's the protection been for Retzloff in the first couple games?
It's been pretty good considering the two guys that started on the right side had never really started at the college football level. And they've kind of almost worked out a rotation now on that right side where Reese Baker is a really talented guy. He was originally at right guard. Now he's played a little bit at right tackle. They've moved in another guy at right guard, Jordan Hall. And then we have a right tackle, Darion Reed, that they've kind of rotated like that. And then the left side of the line has been there for a long time in Derek Graham and Shadre Hurst. And so, all things considered, it's been good protection. There's been games I think where you've kind of waited for the receivers to get open a little bit more than you've expected, but I think the protection's held up well.
Running backs, you mentioned both transfers, Maurice Turner and then Zuberi Mobley. Are those the two guys that are going to be carrying the ball mostly?
Mostly, it's still a question of Mo Turner. He's been out since the season opener with an ankle injury, and so they've been kind of running this rotation of Zuberi Mobley, and then Arnold Barnes was on our team the last 2 years. And then Javen Gordon has been a very impressive true freshman, the one that we actually flipped from Duke this last offseason. But he's been really, really impressive. And I think that they honestly have more depth there between all of those guys than they have at any point in the past that I've been the sideline reporter.
Before we talk about the defense, you mentioned the Duke game. Obviously, Tulane 3-0 and has a really good opportunity for making a lot of noise this year, really, regardless of what happens on Saturday against Ole Miss. The Duke game, it felt like kind of watching it from afar. I rewatched it, but I didn't watch it live. It felt like that Tulane had control of that game and maybe let off the gas just a little, and then Duke kind of closed the gap. But it didn't appear watching it for me that it was as close as the score indicated.
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt the whole time. You're gonna eventually kind of let something break through. And they've been trying to force Darian to his left the entire game. He finally stopped kind of just refusing to doing that and went to his right, and that's where stuff kind of started to get off a little bit. But yeah, it was one of those games where you never really felt like Tulane was in danger of actually dropping it. And I just think that says a lot about their ability to set the tone early in these games and then just kind of run away with that momentum.
Does this surprise you or maybe people that cover the program that Tulane is able to get high profile and I think ACC team like Duke to come to New Orleans? I know Ole Miss came to Ullman a couple of years ago. Duke came to Ullman. I know last year I forget the team, but another high profile team. Is it a draw of New Orleans? Why do you think Tulane is able to get these teams to come to kind of come down in classification, if you will, and come to New Orleans and play in Ullman?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it does have to do with the draw of the city here for sure. But then I think, to be honest, a lot of these teams that are scheduling non-conference opponents are kind of looking for beatable teams. And I think when they scheduled these teams in the past with Tulane, Tulane looked like a lot more beatable team. I will be curious as these schedules kind of move forward in the past now that Tulane's actually knocking off Power Four programs, whether or not they're going to want to schedule these. But yeah, it's been a really good job, and it's I think really important in this age of college football, especially for G5 programs to have that type of competition before conference play.
Yeah, I was on a show earlier this week, and I was asked about the Tulane Ole Miss series. And I know, looking back through game notes that you've done, and then of course me personally going to a lot of games in years past. This is not a game in which Ole Miss feared to lose. That's not the case anymore. You look at Willie Fritz and what he did at the program, and now of course what John Summerall is doing. This is absolutely a game that Ole Miss has to take very seriously. And you look in years past, and especially this year with Duke winning. Not your daddy's Tulane, so I don't know that they'll have that easily chance to get those teams to come down to New Orleans in years past. Real quick, let's look at the defense, and uh, this defense is always going to be good, serviceable, disciplined under John Summerall. Who kind of stands out to you this year on that Tulane defense?
All three levels I think have really made an impression. We heard a lot about Santana Hopper. He's one of our defensive tackles going into this season, and you can really see why. And then Sam Howard, I think he's just always someone that catches my eye. He's a huge leader, but he's a really great linebacker on the field as well. And then the safety group, I think, is one of the strongest points for Tulane, to be honest, between Bailey Despaney and Jack Chinchu. Bailey Despaney, this is his fifth year at Tulane. That's like a unicorn in today's college football. And then Jack Chinchu was, a true freshman last year. I believe he's a redshirt freshman or sophomore this year. Played early against Kansas State. That was the team that came to New Orleans last year. And Oklahoma performed really well against them and now has been our starter. So I think really watching his development, it's been fun to watch, but I'd say kind of the middle of the defense is definitely a strength.
Special teams, Alec Clark, punter and then place kicker Patrick Durkin. Tulane's always had pretty good special teams. Is that who Ole Miss fans can expect to be kicking the football?
Yeah, it's been a strength for Tulane this year to start the year. You look at the Duke game, they missed a field goal, they blocked a field goal for Duke, and then just Tulane made everything that they need to make. Our kicker made a 50-yarder, which was a career long in week 2 last year. I mean, week 2 last week. And just to consider the fact that there's a new punter, a new holder, a new long snapper, a new place kicker to start the year, and a new special teams coordinator in Jonathan Galante, the fact that it has been a point of strength for Tulane has honestly been really impressive, especially when you consider that the long snapper, was in high school and this is his first experience at the college football level.
We talked a little bit about John Summerall earlier on. You've been around him now for a couple of years. What makes his defense so special that you've seen covering the program?
Yeah, I mean they're really disciplined and they're really tough. And I think that you kind of throw those words around a lot of the time, but I've been on the sidelines in the past, where it feels like the defense, when they get burned, when things start to kind of break down, they start to kind of go down with it. And I think defense is a very emotional position, so that's understandable. But I really have just appreciated the mental focus that I've seen from these guys on defense, after a big play, whether it's good or bad, they're immediately going to the sideline, breaking down film. Their demeanor's not really changing that much. And I think just the ability to keep level heads and really respond to bad situations on the field really well is probably the calling card of that defense.
Looking over the schedule, we talked about it a little bit ago. Tulane could run the table, make it to the American Championship game, win or lose against Ole Miss on Saturday, can still make the college football playoff. Probably would face South Florida in the American Championship game. Um, how good is this team? Because from basically what I saw, you look at the schedule earlier on, kind of hang on to beat South Alabama, beat Northwestern handily, essentially beat Duke very handily. We'll see on Saturday. But your overall thoughts on, you covered college football for a number of years. Just how good is this team to you?
I think again, a lot of it starts with the talent at quarterback, and you really have that in Jake Retzlaff. I think that the team is just kind of built and rallied around him coming to campus. And I think that the strength of this team is their defense. That's going to take them very long in the year. But I think now that they've seen it for themselves, that they've been able to, compete against these Power Four programs, and it's not because they had to, run gimmick plays or get lucky here and there. They really dictated the tone of those two matchups, and so I just think that kind of goes a long way in their confidence this year.
The last home game I came to at Tulane was like I said back in 22, and there was a lot of support for the Green Wave then. How was the support for John Summerall and for this Tulane team this year, especially with an opportunity to have a very special season?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the turnout against Duke, and that was something that they really were trying to get people in the building all week to have that be a sellout, but be a loud, hostile environment for once. And I think to really see how much of an impact that made. I mean, the first missed field goal for Duke, it was because the student section caused back-to-back false starts and pushed them back quite a bit. So, yeah, I think he really has his finger on the pulse of the city of New Orleans, but also just connecting with Tulane. And it's been a fun product on the field. He's a fun coach off the field. It's pretty much an easy sell, and it's been just really cool to see the student section and the student body especially really buy into what he's doing here.
She's Maddy Hudak. Be sure and follow her on Twitter/X at Maddy Hudak _94. Does a great job covering the NFL and the NCAA as publisher for Roundtable. And we know her as a sideline reporter for Tulane Green Wave. Maddy, look forward to seeing you on the sideline on Saturday. Safe travels, and we appreciate you joining us today.
Great. Thanks. See you guys Saturday.